Good evening, everybody. Wonderful. Good evening, everybody. Yay! Thank you. My name is Sophia Nahlawi, author event coordinator here at the Pratt Library, and thank you for joining us. First, about tonight's program. It is a moderated conversation of 45 minutes with a 15-minute Q&A at the end and then signing after that. There are 2 mics on either side of the auditorium. One will coalesce during the program. You will ask your questions at each mic at the end of the program. Thank you for coming. Also, Greedy Reads is our book selling partner for this evening. If you would like to buy a copy of the book, they will be available to trade you some money for some books at the end of the program. And with that, tonight's program. Tonight, I'm happy to welcome Jung to the Pratt Library to discuss her new novel, All the World Can Hold. It's Sunday, September 16th, 2001. Franny and her husband have traded in their elegant Park Avenue co-op for a suite on board the Sonata, a once glittering cruise ship with a complicated history now long past its prime. Though they're not cruise people, Franny is determined to host the trip as planned because it's her mother's 70th birthday, or chilsun, a major rite of passage celebrated by Korean families. But as her husband keeps pointing out, Franny and her mother aren't close, and it is surreal, even wrong, to be on a cruise as the death toll from the attacks on 9/11 continue to rise. All the World Can Hold beautifully explores how we balance our needs and our wants, as well as the regrets we live with and the choices to set them right. And though it's not a 9/11 novel, it does remind us that while the great world spins, the interpersonal dramas don't cease, even as more dire ones play out in the larger world. This evening, Jung will be joined in conversation by novelist Jane DeLury. Jung was born in Seoul, South Korea, and grew up in Fargo, North Dakota. She is the author of Oh Beautiful, which was a New York Times Editor's Choice, a New York Times Group Read, and a San Francisco Chronicle Book of the Year. Her debut novel, Shelter, was long listed for the Center for Fiction's First Novel Prize and was a finalist for the Barnes & Noble Discover Great New Writers Award. She's an associate professor of creative writing at the George Washington University and serves on the board of the Penn/Faulkner Foundation. Jane DeLury is the author of the novels Hedge and The Balcony, which won the Sue Kaufman Prize for First Fiction from the American Academy of Arts and Letters. Her short stories have appeared in publications including Granada, the Georgia Review, Plowshares, and the Yale Review, and have won a Penn O. Henry Prize and a Pushcart Prize. She is a professor of creative writing at the University of Baltimore, where she directs the BA in English. In a starred Library Journal review, they wrote, "Writing with grit and compassion, Yoon unveils the heart of her characters and brings forth an engaging piece that looks into the realm of friendships, family, identity, and belonging." And Pulitzer Prize-winning author Edward P. Jones remarked, "Yoon, ever the craftswoman, has the ability to couple the tragic with the mundane. The exquisite wonder of All the World Can Hold is to witness the life moves of grandly but painfully realized characters." It's my great pleasure to welcome Jung and Jane DeLury.
Hello, thank you for being here. I am so excited to be here. I love this woman and I love her book, and that's such a nice combination. I had a galley of All the World Can Hold, and I read it. I read it in like 2 nights, which is a real record for me. It's just such a gripping, funny, sad, wise, engaging novel. So I'm just really, really delighted to be here to talk to Jung about it. And I thought we could start with just a snippet of you reading from the book.
Sure. Thank you all so much for being here today, and thank you to the Pratt Library for hosting us. I think you heard a little bit about Franny and her husband Tom, and there are two other main characters in this novel. One is named Lucy, and she is a doctoral candidate at MIT. She is brilliant and about to embark on a career of her choice. She just doesn't know what that career is or should be, so she's kind of running away and taking a cruise with her roommate at the last minute, which is very unlike her. And the third character that I'm going to be reading an excerpt from is named Tom, who is an actor who appeared on a television series that's very similar to The Love Boat, which factors into this novel in very strange ways. And Tom and Doug, and Doug is kind of an out-of-work actor of a certain age, and he is on a reunion cruise that is set on the same ship that he used to film on, and it was the site of lots and lots of bad behavior. So this is from Doug's opening chapter, and it's a really quick excerpt because I'm excited just to talk with Jane. His agent probably shouldn't be his agent anymore, but at 62, with only a handful of recent screen credits to his name, Doug knows that he'll never do better than Annette, whose reputation still manages to open some doors for him, albeit fewer and fewer each year. Now in her late 70s, maybe even her early 80s, Annette routinely forgets things and sends him inscrutable messages from her BlackBerry that she says she didn't mean to send. She also falls out of contact, sometimes for weeks at a time, which would be fine if she still employed her legion of terrified-looking assistants to take his calls. But those days are long gone. Doug blames Annette for his current predicament, sitting in a dark corner of the grotto, a place he thought he'd never return to again. But here he is, trying not to hyperventilate and failing miserably. He sinks into his seat, head buried into his hands, telling himself to inhale 1, 2, 3, exhale 1, 2, 3. This is the third panic attack he's had in as many days, an unusually high number for him. The worst of them was on the flight from LAX to JFK right after US airspace reopened for commercial air travel. The stewardesses actually had to give him oxygen from a tank as he lay on the floor. Doug was mortified for causing such a commotion in full view of everyone in coach, no less. He apologized profusely when the stewardesses removed the mask and sat him up, his gray hair so charged with static he could see the electrified strands in his peripheral vision. The red-headed one squeezed his arm and told him not to be embarrassed. Then she gestured toward the half-empty cabin and said he wasn't alone. Everyone was so nervous about flying now. Although Doug agreed with this, he'd caught himself guiltily eyeing a Middle Eastern man during boarding. He couldn't bring himself to tell her that his fear came from an entirely different source. The last time Doug set foot on the Sonata, it was 1982. Ronald Reagan was president. The Berlin Wall was still standing. He had a bit part in Raiders of the Lost Ark that ended up on the cutting room floor. He didn't miss being on this ship, not at all. In fact, he suspects that some of the worst moments of his life took place in this room. He's both grateful and horrified that he was too drunk or high to remember most of them now. It's a testament to Annette's prickly, persuasive nature that she finally convinced him to book a Starlight Voyages reunion cruise, returning to the same ship where his best-known television series was filmed. She argued that it was great money for just an appearance, the most anyone was ever going to offer him. He was stupid to keep turning it down. Plus, it came with an ocean view suite and legions of fans who were willing to pay top dollar to meet one of their favorite stars from the show. Wouldn't that be nice? Annette had asked nearly an year earlier when she first told him about the job, being adored again in sunny Bermuda. Thank you.
So one of the things I loved about the book that I didn't think about because I really read it for pleasure, but then when I looked back on it and thinking about tonight, I just think it's so brilliant how you pulled off three distinct, very fully developed characters, very full stories in the novel, and yet everything works together so beautifully, but the characters don't interact that much, right? And I found that kind of genius. I mean, they have their own cast of characters that come with them, right? Like annoying mothers and clingy fans, and but I'm curious. I like origin stories, so I'm curious if there was one character, if there was an origin character, or if you just like saw these three people on this ship, or was Doug first? Was Franny first?
Franny was actually the first character. Franny is the Korean American woman who's there with her family. Um, just kind of a hands up, has anyone actually seen The Love Boat, or is this too? Okay, some people have. Okay, so if you haven't seen it, just a quick FYI, the Love Boat structure has 3 different storylines. 2 of them are more dramatic, one of them is more comedic. And all 3 of those storylines come to some sort of conclusion by the time each episode finishes up. So I borrowed actually from that structure for the novel. I started out with Franny, but Franny just didn't feel like full enough. And if you've ever been on a cruise or been at a resort, you know that you're kind of thrown together with a ton of different random people. And I wanted this particular cast of characters to feel big and sort of random. So that particular structure allowed me to build out and find Doug and then eventually find Lucy, and I sort of twisted them together.
So it's so much better than The Love Boat.
I watched some Love Boat, definitely.
So the novel takes place in the shadow of 9/11. I mean, it's 5 days after that event. Can you talk a little bit about how that background event sort of influences all of the characters? Because I thought you handled it really deftly, and I'm curious. It's a challenging, enormous event to write about, and you did it so well.
Thank you. I have been wanting to write a 9/11 related novel for as long as I've been writing, so probably like close to 20 some years. Every time I sat down to do it, I started writing about 9/11. And I think that there are other writers like DeLillo and Jess Walter who have written those sort of head-on facing novels and done them well. I did not want to do that. I was writing a novel that I couldn't really sit through the actual like drafting of. So I wanted 9/11 to be a factor, but not, the focus of the book. So each of these people, they're kind of running away from their lives in addition to running away from like the grief of this particular event. And I thought angling the event in that way was how I was able to best address it. It only just took me 20 years to figure it out.
So Franny, let's talk about Franny for a minute. And so she's planned this 70th birthday, this chilsun for her mother, and she's got her siblings, and and this terrible national tragedy happens, but Franny's like, we need to board that boat, we need to have this party. But it's more about, having, some kind of party planning OCD. It's about her relationship with her mother and with her family. And I just thought that was so, that was one of my favorite scenes in the book. The party scene is just a hilarious disaster. But can you talk about, because I felt like pressures of community, family identity connected the characters thematically. So could you just talk about Franny and Franny, her mother, why this party is so important to her?
So in Korean culture, we give a party for our elders when they reach the age of 60, 70, 80, and of course those parties get rarer and rarer with each decade of life. But they're really kind of an occasion to spend a lot of money on your parents and to make a big spectacle so that the people around them, the people who go to the party, understand that these elders have done a good job of living. They've raised their children well. So Franny really wants to do this special event for her mother. They're already doing it in a kind of non-traditional way, going away on a cruise ship. Her mother doesn't really have any friends, doesn't want to bring anyone. So there's all this pressure to have this special moment that no one really wants as much as Franny, which is part of the reason why it kind of ends up being a disaster. Franny and her husband Tom are also of a wildly different class than her own mother, her brother, most of the people on the ship. Tom kind of like looks down his nose at being on a cruise ship for most of the event. And Franny is kind of caught in the middle between trying to do something nice and kind that no one else wants as much as her. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I think all of the characters have something, some project they want to accomplish on the ship. I mean, Doug wants to get through this reunion, maybe without running into someone he doesn't want to run into. But then they also have all these complex interpersonal dynamics going on, and the novel opens with this scene with Tom and. I don't want to embarrass you or your husband Joel, but you do have such a great marriage. But I thought you just wrote a not so great marriage so well. So was Franny always, were Franny and Tom always not doing well? I mean, was that friction there from the beginning? Because that's the first chapter. That's how we enter the book, and it's just.
Yeah, they always had friction from the very start, and if you read the book, you'll meet them when they're being shown around in their cabin for the first time, and for a while, like without knowing quite like what event has happened in the background, you'll think that Tom seems unreasonable and he seems rude and he seems curt and really obsessive about like there's not a TV that's working. He wants to know what's going on in the news, and he seems kind of like this inattentive, unpleasant, unkind person. And then, once the reader very quickly learns that this event is happening on 9/16/2001, there's that moment where actually it seems like Franny is the one who's being really unreasonable, and Tom is actually, like many people, interested in the news and what's happening in the world. But yeah, there was always friction between this couple from the start, definitely.
My questions.
You might need
them.
those. Or not. I don't know.
I got it. What about, so let's talk a minute about Lucy. It's hard for me to choose a favorite character. I even really like Doug, even though he's the character I maybe relate to the least, but I really ended up liking Doug a lot. But Lucy she's an engineering student, is that right?
It's computer science engineering.
Computer engineering, yeah. But she has this secret passion, this secret dream. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Lucy is 28, and like I said, she's brilliant, and she's getting her doctorate in things that I don't understand at all. And she has, from a very young age, just loved to paint. And has been encouraged to pursue painting as like a nice little hobby, but not something that anyone really does. So she's a very obedient daughter. She's been raised to get a good education, get a good job, have a stable life, like have a terrific career and have a family. And at 28, she's really going through the motions and pleasing her family, but really not pleasing herself at all. And part of it is that the kind of career that she's contemplating doesn't allow for her to do the thing that she loves the most, which is paint, or to grow as a painter. So she gets a plein air class in on the cruise, but that doesn't go so well.
Okay, so Doug. So was he a challenging character for you to write, or no? He was a fun character to write.
He was so much fun.
Yeah, so,
he was more fun than any character that I think I've ever written.
Yeah, tell us more. I mean, I know all about Doug, but tell them more about Doug.
Doug is a recovering alcoholic who takes a lot of benzos on this trip in order to keep himself calm. He's like one step away from taking that drink the entire time because he's really thrown into a place where he is sort of facing his own demons and the sight of some of his worst behavior. So he's stressed out. He doesn't want to be there. He's surrounded by people who he kind of thinks are weird. Like these Starlight Voyages reunion cruise people are kind of a weird crowd. And he doesn't like the way that they fawn over him because he really does feel like a failure in his professional life and in his personal life. So Doug for me was such a disaster that it was always really fun when I got to his chapters and I got to sit down and work on him. He was unpredictable in a way that I really enjoyed. But he's also like a decent person who has done terrible, terrible things in his past and is trying to make himself better. And I kind of appreciated that element of his personality. He, long before Me Too, knows that he has treated people horribly and is trying to become a better person by himself and before there's any sort of public impetus to make amends.
He's great on the dance floor, too.
He's great on the dance floor, yeah. Disco.
So a cruise, such a fun setting to work with. Is that true? I mean, edible, what was it? Edible
garnishes.
Edible garnishes.
Yes.
Who knew? Eggs disguised as penguins.
Yeah.
If I remember correctly.
Yeah.
Is that right?
It's an activity.
Yeah. So we have that. We have the painting class. We have the dance class. I mean, it was so great. Did you just watch The Love Boat to come up with these ideas, or did you do research?
I took one cruise in my life. It's probably the last cruise that I took, and it was on September 16th, 2001.
What a coincidence.
Yeah. And people have asked, like, did Joel and I go on a cruise as part of the research? But, that cruise was like over 2 decades ago, and there's nothing like comparable, I think, with cruising now. What I do remember about the cruise that we were on is that the crew was lovely and trying so hard to keep us focused on having fun. And I think they called them funtivities, but I couldn't write that in the book. That was just too much. That was like a bridge too far for me. Could not use that word. But like on the hour, every single hour, there was stuff to do. And while it wasn't necessarily an edible garnish class, I do remember sitting there and watching a man like doing a magic show. And I'm thinking to myself, like, 9/11 just happened and I'm on a boat in the ocean watching a man pull like scarves out of, a hat. So it was just surreal. But I did research in the sense that I looked at a lot of cruise itineraries and tried to find actual real events. That's where the edible garnish class came from. There's a horrifying thing called a men's sexy leg contest that's in the book, and that's a real thing that Princess and Carnival both do. So, yeah.
Well, I think the fact that they are in the middle of the ocean and away from television and the news also allows them some of that freedom to try to forget. Do you think that's true?
Yes, and they try. And one of the things I should mention is that on this particular ship, the comm satellite is down, so people can't watch TV. They can't call out to people until they get back into the port of Bermuda, or they get back to Boston when they return home. So they're really in a bubble, even more so than a regular cruise ship. And I think that kind of helps them, but it's too big of an event and too much grief that they're trying to outrun that they simply can't.
I wanted to talk about Doug's relationship with his nephew a little bit because I thought that was just such a sweet. We don't get a lot of nephews and nieces in literature, I think. And I thought he's a lonely guy. He's kind of messed up most of his interpersonal relationships, right? And he's worried about, getting old alone. But could you talk a little bit about Gideon and Doug?
Yes. So Gideon has just graduated from Pomona. It's kind of unclear whether he is there because he really wants to be or if he has been sent by his dad, Doug's brother, to kind of be a guardian over his uncle and make sure he doesn't get into anything that he shouldn't. But they do have a sweet relationship, and he is a kid, right? So he does some things, particularly with some women that Doug finds deeply uncomfortable, that serves as a reminder of some of the things that Doug has done to women in the past. So Gideon is kind of like a marker of time and how time changes, and social values definitely change. I also just really liked having a nephew in the book. The novel is actually dedicated to our 7 nephews. We have no nieces, just 7 nephews, and all of them except for one were born after 9/11. So that always kind of throws me that this event is just something that they have read about or watched on video and not sort of experienced in the way that, most of us have.
I'm just thinking that time, I've been on one cruise too. I told Jung, this is, my mother bought this in 1985 when we were on a cruise in Greece. So I'm wearing it to celebrate Jung's book. But I think time moves very strangely. Did you think about that when you're on a cruise? It's like there's almost no time. And this is not going to be very clearly articulated, so you can just nod. But I felt that each character was dealing with a different aspect of time. Like I felt like Doug is on the cruise to face his past. Franny, the present, these relationships right now, her mother, and Lucy, the future, what decision will she make for her direction? But I guess my question is, like narrative time and cruise time. I mean, did you find that you were in a different space? I mean, it takes place over 5 days.
Yes.
Is that right? Did that present challenges to work within this? I'm going to start asking you about the writing in the book, but to work within this, to get that much story in a 5-day cruise.
I think once I found the structure, it was easier. Like once I realized that each chapter was broken into like 3 parts and each chapter followed a particular character, it got easier to figure out sort of the timing and the metabolism of action and activity in each chapter. But that's the reason why it takes me like years to figure out what those first like 3 chapters or 5 chapters are going to feel like, because I'm kind of writing into structure rather than planning it out. So time was kind of tricky, but once I figured out that, there were 5 days of the cruise, and each chapter kind of revolved around one person, it became much easier. That last third, like the last third really felt like it was writing itself in many ways.
Yeah, I know you've said that this book came pretty easily to you. I mean, and I don't know if that's compared to the others, but yeah.
Once I figured out what I was actually writing, which was not the book that I thought I had been writing several times, like once I sat down and I decided these people are on a cruise ship and it's a cruise ship, like once I contained them in that way, I think the actual writing took like 2 years and change, which is really, really fast for me. I'm usually like about 4 to 5 years a book.
Was the original story the 9/11 novel?
Yes.
Where you look directly at the
directly facing it, and yeah, the shadow novel, I guess, like the novel you write before you figure out the novel that you're actually writing.
Right, yeah. And then once you started writing, how much, so 2 years to the finished book?
2 years to the sale of the book.
Yeah.
Which is like incredibly fast for me.
Were there any changes that ended up happening that when people read the book, they'll think, oh wow, Franny was frank in the first in the first iteration? Or was there any big difference between your first draft and your?
Not much.
Okay.
Not much, only because I sort of do that rolling revision where I'm revising as I'm drafting. The one thing that I really kind of screw myself with is that I keep renaming all my characters. So one of our nephews, the oldest one, who is studying poetry at Iowa, he was talking to me about a character and I had no idea who he was talking about because he was referring to a name that I sort of like confused with another. So yeah, that's like a middle-aged thing, and also like I keep renaming everybody, which is not helping me at all.
So this is your third novel. What do you when you look at your three novels or think about them in the abstract, what do you feel you are were doing in this novel that you were also doing in the other two?
You know, I think that I am always writing about disaster on some level, man-made, political, economic disaster. My first book was about a housing market crisis. We absolutely did that to ourselves. The second book was about an oil boom and eventual bust that really kind of destroyed a way of life in Western North Dakota. And now we're talking about a book that is in the shadow of 9/11. I think I'm sort of fascinated by disaster because it's just so chaotic. And I think people who are good at heart, who are kind at heart, can behave in really different and unexpected ways in response to chaos, in response to disaster. And I'm always really interested in the ways in which people of color and women, people who are of different classes might respond differently in the face of all of these types of things. So I think that's the thread that connects them all.
And what about what you feel you were doing different, that was different in this?
I have never written a rotating cast of characters before, and I want to continue doing that as much as I possibly can because it was so fun to switch from one person's perspective to another. I also, this is going to sound so strange, and I haven't verbalized it ever, and it's going to sound bad and weird, so forgive me, but I laughed a lot while writing this book. And if you would have told me, like during the days of the shadow novel about 9/11, that I would be writing about something that was post 9/11, but that I would be laughing during it, that would have felt like very wrong and weird and strange and inappropriate. But I mean, that is the actual truth. Like I was enjoying writing about these people, and I was enjoying the act of infusing a little bit of levity into a really dark time.
You do have that, I don't think this is no, this isn't giving anything away, but you have that 9/11 has, it almost reads like flash fiction later in the book, the story of that day, it, in this, with this omniscient voice. I thought that was a really interesting moment in reading. I'm curious when you decided to include that, if that came into the book, you know, when it did, or I'm curious about that
Yeah.
piece.
I think what Jane's referring to is that there are two moments in the book in which the ship lands in docks in Bermuda, and suddenly the narration kind of opens up. And instead of following one character, the narrator follows like a bunch of different characters. And the same thing happens in the final chapter of the book. I don't think I'm giving anything away, where the ship docks back in Bermuda, back on land, and the same thing happens again. I knew that I wanted the book to come back to the original sort of event and incident, to not focus on it, but to never forget that was the timing and the time that this novel takes place. I didn't know how to do it for a very long time. I wrote around it for a very long time. But once I figured out that this opening up to a larger scene, and national and international circumstance was the right thing to do, and how to do it, that made it much easier.
And there is one character, this I'm not going to give away, but with a very direct connection to that day that we learn about over the course of the story. So I'm going to ask you some questions about your writing history, and can you just looking at your life as a writer, what would you say are were the watershed moments for you? Was it grad school? Was it an influence when you were growing up? When did you start being interested in writing fiction?
I always liked it. Didn't think I could do it. In college, as an undergrad, I submitted my work to get into a creative writing class, and I was rejected. And I thought, okay, well, that solves that. And then I kind of went off on this like life detour and professional detour. That was a watershed moment that of a lack of resilience. Like I really just thought that this one professor who turned me down was telling me something that everyone would tell me, and not understanding, no, rejection is like a really common part of writing. But I took that hard and then went away and did other things. And I went back to grad school when I was 30, which I think was a watershed moment to decide to go back and really commit to being a writer or trying to be a writer. And I think finding my agent when I was in my early 40s was a big moment, because I had been trying for such a long time, and probably like this close, if not over the line of giving up, and thinking it was just never going to happen. I wonder sometimes if someone would have told me that I would enter grad school at 30 and not publish my first book until 44, if I would have been patient enough to say, like, I can hang out for 14 years and, you know, live in financial insecurity and and deal with rejection all the time. I wonder sometimes. But, you know, here we are at book 3.
Good thing and you're in good company. I didn't get into my creative writing class I applied to either in college.
I was
Maybe
just
that's
so
why
tender.
we're friends.
I was like
Yeah.
19 and
Yeah.
tender.
Didn't get into the acting class either. It's rough. Um, were you a big reader growing up?
Very big reader.
What were your favorite?
I liked Robinson Crusoe a lot, just because he was so industrious. I don't know, like make something with a button. I'm like, I just thought that was kind of a great thing when he kept going back to the ship and collecting junk. My school librarian, when I was in grade school, gave me a book that was far too, like, it was not my reading level, but she was so nice to me, and she let me hang out after school that I just decided to try, and that book was Little Women. But I was like 8 when she gave it to me, which was kind of nuts. I think she just wanted to keep me busy and like out of her hair. So I read it, and it was hard, but I just remember, I loved that particular story, and I loved like the sisterhood. Yeah, so it started early for me, for sure.
What did you major in college? I'm circling back.
Nothing useful.
What was it?
It was, well, it was Asian studies, which was an interdisciplinary major, which basically meant that I like took history and literature and things that I would have taken anyway, just for my own interest. But I was one of these kids who was like a really goofy student and just declared too late. I like waited really long. I wasn't sure what the heck I was doing. I wanted to do studio art, and had terse words with my parents about like the utility of a studio art degree as an undergrad. So it just took me forever to figure it out.
Do you think you relate to this aspect of Lucy, where she has this passion to be an artist, but she's doing?
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely,
yeah. 'Cause
absolutely.
I'm hearing echoes.
There are lots and lots of echoes. There are more echoes in this book than there are in other books, which is
Share some more echoes.
I mean, Lucy is one of the things that is happening to Lucy in the book is that she is in the height of recruitment season. She can work for the defense industry. She can work for government. She can work for a tech company. And in 2001, one of the larger kind of startups that's really hiring aggressively is Google. And I think I was facing like a similar fork in the road professionally in 2001, and you know, feeling like I had a lot of unique opportunities, but not wanting any of them because I just didn't want to do these things with my life. So like Lucy and I definitely have a lot of DNA that is shared. Certainly, even Doug, I think, is this like goofy character who doesn't look like me at all. But I think, you know, Doug's desire to be more open with people and to let people actually see him. I think that's something that a lot of people have, including me.
What about Franny?
Oh gosh. Franny has that relationship with her family in which she's always trying to do the right thing, and because there's like a lot of cross-cultural communication and miscommunication, a lot of her efforts don't quite land the way that she wants them to. And I definitely feel that, like intergenerationally, cross-culturally with my parents. I will try to do something that's very, very traditionally Korean, and they'll be like, "What are you doing? Like, why are you sending us pears?" I'm like, I thought you wanted the pears. Like, aren't I supposed to send some pears? And they're like, "What are you doing?" They don't get it. So, yeah, that's definitely, ripped from real life as well.
Yeah, I mean, that scene at the chilsun is funny, but it's also, it's painful. I mean, the reader feels with her desire to do the right thing and connect to her mother, and yeah. Um, so, what is the pleasure of writing for you, and what is the pain?
The pleasure is when I have a whole manuscript and I can see it, like I know what I'm finally doing. Even if I have a ton left to do and a lot left to edit, but if I see that the story is there and I see that the structure and the characters are there, it's just, button seat at that point, like just doing the work, and I know I can get there, and that's pleasure. The pain is getting to the point where I can see it. Like, that's when I spend so much time kind of in the woods, starting, restarting, reevaluating, not being certain if I've gone down the wrong path. And for me, writer's block is always, always when I've taken a wrong turn in the road and my mind is telling me, like, go back. You've done something wrong. You need to fix it. So yeah, the pain is kind of being lost and spending so much time trying to find what it is that I'm actually looking for and not knowing until I actually find it. It's it's a lot.
I used to think the questions to writers about, like, do you use a pen? Do you write longhand? Do you drink tea or coffee when you write? I used to think those were silly questions, but I no longer think this because everybody is trying to focus in this society. Everybody is losing the art of focus and attention, and I think as writers we have to focus to get the writing done. So I'm curious about how you do that. How do you block out the noise, the internet? How do you make space for the concentration that writing demands?
I have to write in total silence. Like if you're a writer and you can go to a cafe and get anything productive done, like hats off, I salute you, because I cannot write with anybody's noise, like in my space, including my husband. I have noise canceling headphones. I use an app called Freedom that literally shuts down every device. I cannot do anything. I cannot check the weather. I cannot use the GPS for as long as I tell Freedom, like, I want 2 hours of time. Like 2 hours of time, I have no access. And I also write in the morning before I have to do anything else. So the house is quiet and peaceful, and yeah, it's just, I have a couple of hours to myself, and that makes all the difference in the world.
And could you describe Buddy's role in your writing process?
Buddy is our rescue dog. We adopted him last February. He is an absolute love, and we adopted a cat. This sounds bad. We adopted a cat with the hope that she would be my lap cat and sit around on my desk and be my companion while I wrote. And she is a cat. She's totally aloof. She doesn't like me. And she's never around. So we ended up getting this dog who is just a love bug, and I'm so glad that he's around.
And he curls up in your writing room, right?
He curls up next to me. There's a little bed. He has one, and he curls up and he's just hangs out. It's perfect.
Good. Well, I think on that note, ending with Buddy is always a good idea.
Yeah.
We are going to open up to the audience for questions.
Hello, wonderful audience. If you have a question, you're going to come to the mic I am at, or the mic on the other side of the room where my compatriot is at. I'm also pulling questions from our online audience, but please do not be shy. I will move out of the way as soon as you come up. Please do not worry. I will start us off with a question from our online audience, which is, what is your typical writing routine like? Do you have one, or do you write when inspiration strikes?
I write every single day. I have to, and I know that lots of writers don't do that, and I think there was a long period of time when I used to think I was always doing something wrong, because other writers did it X way or this way or that way, and I thought that I had to fit into some other model that just didn't work for me. Like I'm pretty Capricorny in my habits, so yeah, I'm at my desk every single day, even if it's only for 15 minutes. It's helpful for me to revisit the work in that particular way.
Wonderful, makes sense. We'll take our next question on the other side.
Hello. Elizabeth. Yeah, I love that question because I think I am so fortunate to be able to teach, and to teach undergrads in particular is really fun. I think so much of my own writing comes from obsession and seeing really young people find their own kinds of obsession and the things that they want to write about and think about in the world, particularly now, is really important in terms of giving students an outlet so that they can kind of process the things that are happening in this world through fiction, which in some ways is kind of comforting. I think I'm really lucky that I get a chance to be always talking about craft, even as I'm struggling with craft, and then bringing it into a classroom and sort of breaking things down for people who are just getting their start. So like writing and craft and fiction are always like kind of circling and swarming around in my head. And I think that just kind of makes me a more productive writer. There's also like something so hopeful about seeing somebody who is 18 or 19 years old and writing really kind of extraordinary stories, even if they're unfinished or unpolished. But you can see them sort of becoming on the page, and I think that's really kind of lovely and such a gift. Thanks, Elizabeth.
Hey, congratulations, Jung.
Thank you.
And thanks for this conversation, the two of you. I haven't read the book yet. Oh, I have a two-part question. I haven't read the book yet, so I didn't realize that for the most part, it sounds like the novel's written in three distinct stories among three different characters.
Mm-hmm.
When did you figure out what the single story these three stories are telling, whether that be dramatic or thematic? So that's my first question. And then my second question is, who was your favorite or maybe most memorable guest star on The Love Boat?
Okay, so I think the overall story, the shape and sort of the thematic thread that started to come together, that probably happened about a third of the way through. Like I was probably like 6 chapters in when I was starting to understand what connected these people, which is not only like grief, but also a sense of hope and a possibility of change for the better if they're willing to take it. So yeah, I was probably like about a year into the writing when that finally kind of came to me. And in terms of my favorite Love Boat guest star, I mean, the only one I really remember was her name Cha-Cha?
Charo.
Charo, yeah.
She was like on there like 5 times.
Yeah, she was always on that show, and I'm like, wow, that is something that would not translate in 2026, right? Like that was wild. But yeah, I mean, you have to imagine like, you know, little Jung living in Fargo, North Dakota. There's nothing to do except watch the Love Boat. So like this show seemed extraordinarily glamorous to me, like in my childhood. And a fun fact, which you didn't ask about, but I'm just going to tell you anyway, Leslie, is that that cruise that we were on in 2001 was actually on the Pacific Princess, which was the real Love Boat. And the poor lady was very, very faded in 2001. She needed to be retired.
Yeah.
But I could see like elements of that old kind of glamour that they were going for in the 80s. It was still there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thanks, Leslie.
Have another question queued up from our online audience, which is, what are you working on next?
That's always a really tough one. I am working on a novel that is more speculative fiction than anything that I've ever written. And it is related to yet another disaster, a fictional pandemic. I write very cheerful books about very cheerful topics. Yeah, but it's kind of it's a departure in some ways, and I'm still in the process of figuring it out, and it feels very, very early. But it definitely takes into account that there is a disaster in terms of illness, and thinking about how we take care of people who have illnesses and what we would do to possibly eradicate the worst of them. Thank you. Good night. Yeah, I think they're all different. And for me, again, the challenge is figuring out like what the novel is, what the story is, what the structure should be. That always takes time, and it's always going to take time, and that process is never easy. I think what made this particular book easier is that I had like the extraordinary privilege and luxury of being on sabbatical. So I was off for a year and not teaching, and just able to like go to my desk, sit for 8 hours, and work, which is a lot of work. But that's, I think, why this one came quicker. It wasn't that it was easier, it was just that I had a moment in time when I was freer with my energy than anything I've ever had before. And I'm not sure if I'm ever going to have that again, but it was great while it lasted. And I hope that other people get to experience that too, because it did help me to stay in the story and to stay in the world of the story that I was creating in a more concentrated way. Yeah, thank you, Nate.
Hi.
Hi.
So I haven't read this book, but I just finished reading Oh Beautiful not too long ago. And one thing I noticed from that book, and then thinking back to the prior novel, was one of the joys I got from reading your novels was the frisson of anxiety for these characters who are doing things in your reading and thinking, no, 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 don't do that. And I'm just wondering, is that something you think about doing, or is there a joy in that for you in writing that kind of character, and what is that creative process like?
Yeah, there's definitely joy in writing kind of a badly behaved character who acts in ways that we know are going to lead to some discomfort at best, or some real like trauma at worst. I enjoy that so much, actually, and I think that books really need tension. At least the books that I want to read and the books that I want to write, they need that kind of tension, and they need it early on. And I'm always trying to create that through decisions that characters make that we wouldn't necessarily want to see them make or make for ourselves. So yeah, I think it makes the characters sort of complicated. And if I can make a complicated character who behaves sometimes kind of badly almost likable, or at least sympathetic, that's always was kind of a win as well. Thank you.
Hi, thank you so much. My question is really brief. Can you talk about the title of the book?
Yes, thank you. That's a great question. The original title of the book was Wake, which I had, like, there are many, many meanings of the word wake. I was thinking about it more in terms of like cognitively coming into like a realization. I was also thinking about the motion behind a boat. Every editor who saw the book said that title has got to change, including the editor that eventually bought the book. She's like, that's not a good title. That's not a title that any bookseller is going to be able to sell. It's like, oh, okay. So it's really hard to go from like working on something for a couple of years and then calling it a certain thing, and then you don't know what to call the thing anymore. Actually, my first book had the same situation. Editor wanted the book, hated the title, had to change it. Same with the third book. So we went on a hunt, we being my agent, my editor, and I, and try to find something that kind of sort of fit the themes of not only grief, but hope and possibility and change that felt a little like more uplifting. And this is a line from a James Weldon Johnson poem, Beauty That Is Never Old. And it is a lovely piece about how like love can lift. The lead up to the writing of this book, I did a lot of research on the 9/11 Victim Compensation Fund, read a lot of transcripts of interviews, and I think one of the things that always struck me was Kenneth Feinberg, who was the special government master of the fund. He interviewed so many people, so many victims, family members, and in his memoirs, he talked about how there was so much love. Like, in those interviews, there was anger, of course, and there was frustration and grief, but above all, there was love. So it seemed right to kind of tie into that idea that love can save people. Thank you.
We have time for one last question. I will pull it from our online audience, which is, you mentioned having to write in silence, but does that mean, you mentioned having to write in silence, but are you also unable to read books or watch media while working on a project?
Yes, I'm one of those people who cannot concentrate on anything, reading or writing, unless there is complete silence, which is so challenging for my husband, who can, like, he's one of those people who can go to a cafe and get a ton done when there's like all this noise around him. And you're a noisy person, honey, I love you, but you're a noise monster. So it's just kind of like, you know, it's an interesting challenge, but Bose makes some really good noise canceling headphones.
Please put your hands together for tonight's moderator, Jane DeLury.
Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you, Jane.
And tonight's author, Jung.
By the way, I have cookies. I have book cookies. So please come and get a book cookie off the table. I would love to give them all away because I can't have them in my home. Yes, Edgar, take a couple book cookies. Thanks, everybody.
We'll be out in 5 minutes. Go buy some books. We'll be out there soon. Thanks for coming.